All right, so I'm set up to cut the shelf, measured out at 28 and 7/8. So I've set my table saw up. I got a 2x4 piece of crappy sanded plywood, and ready to make the cut. So. Alright, so I am going to knock this edge down with some sandpaper. Got some chip out because this plywood is just junk. In hindsight, if I had to build this again, I would not use plywood, at least not for the structural components of it. I would use 2x4s, and I would make 2x4 frames on the sides with a 2x4 frame across the top like a torsion box with legs, the 2x4s, and I would do the same on the bottom. And I might sheet it with like some 3/8 cheap plywood just to tie the 2x4s together. But I would not use 3/4 inch plywood to build this cardigan. But from watching this, hopefully it'll give you some ideas on the overall design and how the tool layout works and how the shelf works to store your own tools, and then you can use construction technique that you'd like to use. But I would recommend, at least for what I got, I was unwilling to spend $60 a sheet for good quality birch or oak plywood just to use for shop furniture. So I did it to myself. I bought cheap plywood. And this is what you get when you buy cheap plywood. So I might come back later and do some more sanding after I get this thing built. But I think just knocking the edges off will be good. So if there's a bend in it, I want the bend up. So amazingly, it's mostly straight. It does look like there might be a little bit of a crown. Yeah, on this side, so this will be up. I'm gonna mock up the install and then I'll be right back with you for the next step. All right, so we're back here. Last steps. Got the shelf cut. I got it sanded. It fits great. And I got the sander mounted. So as you can see, I can pull the sander out. It's sturdy. It's not going to move. It moves about maybe a ½ inch. And I think that's great because the downward pressure is where I'm going to be. I'm going to push in and down. And I don't see any issue at all with this. The only thing I had to be cognizant of is I had to use flat top screws, bolts, such that they don't protrude down, and that's because I did make a modification, again, to the Franken cart. The box wasn't square because the plywood, again, is crap, and so it was bowed out a little bit on the front by about a ½ inch. So what I did is I ran a stringer across the front and clamped that into place to make sure that the front opening is the same as the back, which means my shelf could be square, and it adds some more rigidity to the overall cart. So I think the only thing I need to do is put a handle or something on this, maybe one handle or two small handles, and that will help me pull it in and out. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to add a power strip to the top of the cart so I can plug all the wires in. I want to mount it to the top behind the grinder, and the mounting provisions on this are just terrible. So what I'm currently doing is I'm going to take this thing apart and see if I can screw through the back. Alright, so what I'm up to now is I took this power strip apart because I don't want to mount it with these slots. So I'm going to mount it through this back. I think what I'll do is just drill 4 holes, run some screws through it, and then put the cover back on. The hardest part is going to be trying to get these Phillips head screws. I don't know if you can see that in the side because I'm going to put it over here, so I have limited access, but I guess I'll figure it out. And the other thing I didn't think about is when I took this thing apart, there's a ground wire here that I guess I have to attach first. Yeah, so, okay, I can just run that screw and that nut through there. So not a big deal. Alright, so what we're going to do is drill a couple of holes through this plastic. I've kind of marked where I want this thing, and hopefully I can make this happen here. Alright, so in theory, I will be able to cinch this down . without destroying it. Alright, one more screw. Truth be told, I probably could have just put 2 screws on the sides and it'd have been good enough. Alright. So the tricky part, I think, is going to be getting this little tiny screw and this nut screw comes in from the outside. I know you can't see this, but I don't think it's possible to let me find a need a very tiny wrench or socket. And that is not small enough. And of course that's too small. And it's probably going to end up being metric. No, this will work. Well, I thought it would. Alright. As I expected. Alright, let's see if I can. I think that got it. Alright, so Alright, got those in. These are not going to be as easy, but I might not put them all in. Got that one. Yeah. Let's see if I can get these in by hand. Maybe use a little shorty screwdriver. This one, I'm gonna have to get an offset screwdriver, I think. Slow but sure. Okay. So, not sure if you can see that. Got about a 6-foot cord. I'll route all of the power cables for the tools and come back with you for the final result and some final thoughts. Okay, I'm back. So what I did is I drilled an 1.25 inch hole with a spade bit. Can you see that? Yeah. And that way my cord can come up from the bottom shelf. And now I'm just kind of dressing these cables such that they're not a complete mess. With a few tie straps. Okay. It's going to be a little messy, but I don't think it'll matter. Need one more tie strap. All right. Actually, I ought to put one more on there. Okay, I think that'll do it. Trim these off. And we are done. All right, so let's plug this baby in, and then see what we end up with here. Not sure I like that switch, but that's okay. So what we end up with here is, make sure this is in frame, is Frankencart, and I'm going to label it right across the front. Frankencart. Using a bunch of scrap and one piece of plywood, I was able to put this together. And we've got power to any tool. It's the grinder. This is bandsaw. But got my shelf here where I can pull out my my sander and use that. I might put a little clip there on the power, but seems to work great. And got a little storage spot on the bottom for my chop saw that I rarely use. And again, I can pull the cart out. Alright, so what we got here is a Franken cart. So a mobile tool cart that I built, one piece of plywood and a bunch of scrap. Got 4 tools that are operational, 1 tool stored. So the storage on the bottom is for the chop saw. I have a shelf here for my sander, which I can just pull out and utilize. Easy as that. When I'm done with the sander, I'll just slide it back in. I'm going to use these 2 tools the most, so this cart's going to sit up against the wall. I got a drill press here, grinder over here, and then a bandsaw on the back. And if I need to use the bandsaw, I just pull the cart out from the wall, turn it around, and I can use the bandsaw. So wired it all up with a circuit extender or a power strip, and that's basically it. So hopefully you could take something away from this video, where you can get a lot of tools in a very compact space. I'm not saying you got to build it like this, obviously. In fact, if I had to build it again, I would not use plywood for the structure of the cabinet. I would use 2x4s. It would have been probably half the cost to use a 2x4 frame. I could have put some 3/8 plywood maybe over the frame just to tie it all together. I might have used heavier plywood on the top, but I wouldn't build it all out of plywood. It was expensive and it was frustrating. So anyways, that's it for this project, and hopefully you can take some ideas away from this and build your own cart. And feel free to post those videos or pictures of your cart down here in the comments. I'd love to see them. So thanks again, and if you like the video, hit that like button and share it with your friends. Hit that subscribe button. I got more projects on the way. Thanks.